I like it. So we'll get right down to the nitty gritty. How about that? We can get you guys started and get you, at least get you out of here by 6. Just kidding, just kidding. See if you guys are paying attention.
There will be a riot on your hands.
That's okay. I'm leaving after this anyway, so it doesn't matter. All right. Anyway, let's get ahead and being serious here. So okay. So then, since we got no new people, I can go ahead and go right into the program itself. So I'm going to go ahead and have us jump straight on over to page 5. I know, and also it should have started with page 1. I don't know how I got it where it's showing starting on page 3, but I was trying to rush this real fast and try to get this ready for your class this week. So just ignore that. Let's jump over to page 5. So in this particular class, what we're going to be talking about here is that we're going to talk about how to create a transaction, how to get more information in the transaction details page, and how what we've done in the earlier class, how will those apply to the transaction. Because you're going to see now, we're all going to start now tying things together, okay? So, on page 5, the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is to go ahead and to create a transaction. So, there's a couple of ways of creating a transaction like you see on page 5. One would be right over here where it says transaction, start a new transaction tile, which opens up this screen here. And then also, you can open it up clicking on the transactions button, clicking on the start a new transaction button over there. So you can actually go ahead and do it either one of those two ways. But the way I would do it right off the bat would be to click on the home page here, and then click on straight here, start a new transaction. I guess because I'm going too fast and therefore it can't stay up with me. Here we go. So on page 6, once I click on the create the start new transaction button there, it's going to take me to page 6 where now I have to complete the following screen. Because before I can do anything in Form Simplicity's transaction section and be able to click on the create transaction button here, I've got to fill in the street address and the transaction name. So I have a street address I'm going to be pulling. I pulled this up from Realtor.com. So it's going to be 9100 West Right. And of course, I always like to do this in uppercase. And this is over in Boise, Idaho. Zip is 83709. So I put in the transaction. But what you have to also put in here in order for you to activate the create the transaction button is to put in the transaction name. So here, depending on your naming convention of your brokerages, because every brokerage works differently, some brokerages may have like a transaction number that may be associated with the transaction name in terms of how they number that. Some may require you to put the last name of the client along with the transaction name. And some of us might be as boring as my make-believe broker and just say, hey, just put the street address, period. So that's you're gonna have to follow your brokerage lead. So since I have to put in the street address, I can just put it in like that. I can type it in, or I can check mark this box that says same as the address, and I automatically kind of pasted it right in there. Okay, so I found that to be really easy to do. Then, as soon as you do that, the create transaction button gets active, and now we're ready to continue on. I would suggest on page 6 that you also select what type of property you're working with. So try to be as detailed as you can by selecting these options here. So then all we're going to do is click on the residential, and then we're also going to select the transaction type. Now I'm going to be working here as a listing agent because we created something related to the seller side. So I'm going to go ahead and work on the listing side. So as a listing agent, I would select listing. As a buyer's agent, I would select purchase. And also here it says listing and purchase. So I would select that if you're both the listing agent and the buyer's agent. And then if you're the rental agent in this transaction, because you have some rental forms or whatever, then you can select that but I'm going to select listing as my transaction type for this particular transaction. Now, at this point, I can go ahead and click on the Create Transaction button. But then what's going to happen when I create a transaction and get out of this screen? I have to add additional forms, right? I have to add the forms every single time. Well, why do I have to do that if my broker has created forms packages, and it's going to say brokerage here, and also it's going to show my broker's name as a created by here, and then you also have the alphabetical order list of all of the packages that the broker has created. If your broker did not create any forms packages, and you personally yourselves have created it, then you'll see it under personal. Anytime an agent creates a package, it's personal. If the broker creates it, it's brokerage. All right? It's going to have your name as the member here that created those form packages, and then under the personal section, you're going to have all of your forms packages in alphabetical order. But what I've created in the previous class was this one here, Residential Listing Package, BRR. I'm just kind of separating it from the ones I've created this week. So here, just click on the radio button, and a radio button is actually a circle, and when you click on it, it produces a solid dot. And then once you click on that, click on the Create Transaction button. It's then going to take us to page 7, to the transaction detail page. And as I scroll down, guess what? Here are those forms that we've selected. And remember, we took the time when we did the forms packages, we also, pre-filled those forms, which will be now negotiable in this transaction. Because we filled it out, but not, it's going to be sometimes all agreed by you and the seller. Any questions on this so far and how we did that? Now, on top of page 7, in that screenshot, below step number 6, every time you create a transaction email address, it's always going to come up and generate a transaction email address for this transaction. Every time you create a new transaction, it's going to have that. Because see, as you can see, 9100 W for West, Wright Street, Boise. And of course, it has a random number that appears after the address. Think of the random number, the same number like you would do for a Gmail account. How many Smiths are there in the world? You can't just say smith@gmail.com. Somebody's already got that. Okay, so you're going to have to come up with one Smith 1 million maybe. Okay, so that is the same process here. Now, this email address you may want to go ahead and use and incorporate in any email correspondence that you are using to work with your client or maybe their family members, whatever. But that is something that you definitely want to include there. When I was a realtor, and I received a call and say, hey Kaz, what's a great email address to forward you my buyer's offer? Well, I wouldn't give them my email address if it was for this transaction. I would give them that email address. And when they respond to that email address and they bring the buyer's offer, well, that buyer's offer will appear under the file section of the transaction. And remember, in the beginning of the first class, we were talking about preferences and email notifications. And I have this, when I receive an email message or an attachment in the send mode, I'm going to get notified that something went into the transaction. That's the purpose of now. See, now we're starting to tie things together now, okay? It may have been clear as mud last class, but now we're starting to put this all and gel it all together here. So that would be something that you definitely may want to do. Another tip I would do if I was in your shoes, whoops, got a little carried away with the arrow there, is that this email address, do you all have like an agent remarks section in your listing? You know that you can put in your agent remarks for any offers, send it to this email address. And then if any of your members click on that and they submit the buyer's offer, that also will appear in the file section of the transaction. And then you can go ahead and get notified there as well. Now, I was told when I was at, I don't know, maybe it was specific to either the association or maybe the form itself. I know when I talked about that yesterday, they said, well, there's not enough room in the agent remarks. You got like, I think 2 or 3 lines, I think. So you just have to kind of make it work. But I would say, put that transaction email address in the agent remarks section. Yes?
The notification comes to your business email and or a phone, a text message, or just the email address you have on there for business?
It's going to be the email address that you have here.
Okay, not also a text?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, what you can do, I'm glad you asked that question. He asked a great question. Can I have the messages, the notifications texted to me? The answer to that is yes, you can.
Very good.
What you can do, this is the way you got to do it though. You go into the email notification section right over here, and there's an option for you to enter in an alternative notification email address. You've got to put your cell number in a form of an email address. So here I'm going to say it's 208-555-1212 at AT&T.net. That's how you get text messages. Now, I'm not sure exactly on the email format. Contact your service provider or the tech helpline, because they can help you with that.
So that alternate notification email cannot be your personal, it would not come to your personal email.
If you put something in here, if you put like an you can put to whatever your email address you want. It doesn't matter to me. It's just that if you put an email address here, or if you're using it for text purposes, then you will not get an email in here.
Yes, and the reason being is that at least this phone, I can receive one default. In other words, I use Yahoo for the phone. I can access my Gmail account, but I'm not going to be notified. There's not going to be a beep, whatever, when an email comes in to my Gmail, which is the business account, because Outlook is dead.
Right.
So I want to, if Agent A sends me,
Right.
I want to be able to know immediately that it comes in, or I'm going to be constantly looking at
Right.
the phone for that, because
But what
the
I'm
business is not the Yahoo account. Is what I'm
Right,
saying.
but what I'm just saying though is that as long as you put this email address as an alternate
Yeah.
with your phone number,
Yeah,
you can get texts.
right on.
But you want to keep in mind though is that you won't get any emails from here. It's either going to be one or the other.
Well, that's single layer thinking.
I'm
You need to
not
hire another geek on that one.
I'm not a programmer, I'm just a lowly old trainer.
Well, a lot of suggestions come from Boise, as we discovered the previous class.
Correct.
There's the one from this class.
Well, this is what you want to go ahead and do.
Dun, dun, dun.
As a
It would be
suggestion,
nice.
there's a feedback button right there,
Oh, okay.
and make that suggestion.
Yeah.
And then select the topic, feature request.
You gotta keep those geeks hired and.
You gotta keep them happy, and then you gotta keep me changing these handouts, so that works. Keeps my job secure too, so.
Pigeons work too, but
Yeah, well,
only North Idaho.
but that's a conversation for another day. Okay. But any question, but that's how you would do that if you wanted to have it text, okay? Cool. So going back to page 7 still, we also can add additional forms to the list of forms that you had already imported. So let's say that I needed to add a specific form specific to this transaction for whatever type this is. So then I can go ahead and click on the add blank forms, which will take you where? To the library, right? And I can click on that, and then I can select whatever forms I need to use. And let's say I'm going to do this one here as an example. And then click on add to the transaction, and now I've added that form in here. I can also add forms from any forms packages that I created here, whether it's through the brokerage forms, or it could be through any of these forms here. And I can select whatever form I want, just check mark it, hit add to the package. So you can do that as well. Any questions on this? Okay. Another thing is our files section. And if you notice over here, you have the option to upload files. So let's say that they didn't email it to you through the transaction email address, they sent it to you. Either one, you can forward it yourself to the transaction email address, or if you already downloaded the offer onto your computer, then you can click on the upload file and locate where you saved that offer, open it up, and then have it dropped in here, and then save it. And then you can also add additional files here, and that's found on page 8, which is the same screen that you see on your screen up there. Any questions on what we're doing here so far? Page 9 and 10 shows you that you can also add transactions from the Forms Packages screen. So if you click on Blank Forms, when you click on that button, you click on Forms Packages. I can select a Forms package and then click on Create Transaction that way. And you get the same exact screen, except you don't have a list of Forms Packages because you're already specifying a Forms package to begin with. All you're now just doing is creating a new transaction. But the same 4 questions are being asked here. And on page 10 shows you basically the same screenshot that we saw on page 7. Any questions so far? Okay, the next page I want us to turn to is page 11. How many of us, it's a dumb question, but I gotta ask it just so I can get some participation in here. How many of us get multiple offers? And you guys probably get like what, 5, 6, maybe 10, right? Sometimes depending on the transaction, right? Well, when you go into your transaction, you probably have that many offers in here, right? And they're all listed. But you know what? I would like to organize my offers. And based on what had been requested over the past several months, members requested that Form Simplicity create subfolders within the Files section. This is how you can organize your offers that way. So on page 11, when you click on New File Folder, you can enter in, let's say, offer number 1. And let's say I'm working with Drew A. Blank. And then I can click on Create Folder. And then I can, whatever number of folders you have, you just create that. And let's say offer number 2 is going to be for Buyer Johnson. Hit Create Folder. So you can make as many folders as you need. Then all you have to do is to check mark the offer or offers that need to go into offer 1. Click on page 12, you're going to click on Move to Folder, select the folder you want it to go to, and move it right there. And you can select multiple boxes, you don't have to do one at a time. You can select, if there's 3 files that need to go under Through a Blank, that's where you put it. So you can select multiple offers over there. And that was what we saw on page 12. Any questions on that? Now on page 12, in step number 1, even though it doesn't show it, but you may want to put it there in the folder section. You see where it says Purchase Folder, Drew A. Blank. When I try to snag the image with what I want to mention this, when I want to talk about it, it disappears. Some disappear, some do not. And what I'm referring to is like if I take my mouse and I go right next to the name, right next to the mouse, there's like a little pencil there. That means I can edit the folder name or the folder description. See, if I click on the pencil here, that's what I can do. Now, I can't do that on a Snagit because the pencil just disappears. So I can't actually print it there unless I was in a Harry Potter movie where you have those newspapers and they always have these pictures that move. See, I can't do that here. So just let you know that way, in case you need to change his name, because he spelled it with a blank, with a K, not with a C, and then hit update folder, and that's how you can change the information here, or add the description. So just remember that you may want to put a little pencil to the right of their name to say that this is going to be your edit button here, okay? Then on page 13 shows you also that, and we'll show you this when we do our e-sign a little bit later on, that when you open up a PDF viewer through Form Simplicity, it also will produce in the screenshot there, a folder drop-down. And then, of course, when you upload additional files, and I'm going to just open up a file here, it doesn't matter which one I choose. See how you have that folder over here, and then you can also drop it directly into that folder that way. So you have different ways where that folder feature will appear. Now, I made a suggestion to Form Simplicity to help you guys out here a little bit. I suggested that instead of me having to do folders every time, why don't we do that inclusive in a Forms package? And that way you can name it whatever you want at that point. Just open it up and then give it a name. But at least you got the folders all preset for you. So I made that suggestion, whether or not it's going to fly, which I think they said was a good idea, in fact. So that way it's much easier, the less you have to fill in, the more you have information over there. I would also suggest, my personal opinion, that maybe create a folder called Signed Documents. So after you use your e-sign, you can put all of those signed documents in the Signed Documents folder. That could be another option here for you too. Any questions about the file folders before we turn to page 14? Cool. Page 14. You have the option, not required, it's an option, to put in a photo. If you want, you can put a photo of the property. You may have a frontal view of the house or the property. Maybe you have in the backyard, there's a large river stream going down the back. Take a picture of the backyard showing the river stream. Or, once again, if you happen to have oceanfront property, take a picture of some of those, which I know we don't have any here. But anyway, whatever picture you want, you can put that there. And the way to do this is on step number 2 on page 14 is to click on right over here, the camera button. And when you click on the camera button, this takes you then to page 15, where now you want to decide how to upload your photo. Note here that there is a JPEG image, a PNG image, a BMP image. What's missing in here too is the .gif image. GIF is also acceptable, but the file size cannot exceed 4 megabytes. And I know most cameras today have high resolution photos, so therefore it's going to be larger than 4 megabytes. So you're going to have to somehow resize that. And I know what you're all thinking. How do I need to do that? Well, there is a program online. You may want to make a note of this if you wish. This has been vetted by the Tech Helpline, of course. That's why I used to follow their lead. But there is a website called Ilovepdf.com. So when I click on that there, it's going to allow you to go in here and resize your photo if you needed to do that, or compress your photo or crop your photo. And if you happen to have brown grass and you want to edit that to give it green grass, you can do that too. all right? But that's called ilovepdf.com. Now, there is also a sister program related to this, and it's called Ilovepdf.com, which basically allows you to go in there and you can do different things. Like what I used to do, especially at Flora Realtors, I always would take some of the PDF PowerPoints and convert them to PowerPoint and then make changes I need to make based on the way I would teach the class. See, so you can actually do that. So a little couple of tips here for you. The I Love IMG and the I Love PDF, they're both free versions. So I would say go ahead and take advantage of that.
Can you pull the picture from the MLS?
Hold that question, I'll answer that in just a moment. You had a question?
I was going to ask, why doesn't it just pull the pictures when you put in the IMLS number?
Because there is no option there for you. However, well, okay, I'm also going to answer those questions then. If you open up your list, if you go into your listing, okay, and there is a form simplicity button on, I think if I remember, well, you're in Paragons, you were showing me in Flex and another MLS, but there should be a form simplicity or an FS button that allows you to import that information into form simplicity, and that should allow you to bring in the photos in that way. Does that make sense?
Is that just for your listings, or would that be
For any list, well, for any listings.
For any?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it should be, but there should be a form simplicity or an FS button up on the top of the listing or somewhere.
I'm searching.
Oh, you're searching, I got you, okay. All right, well, while you're searching, I'll keep on going here. So on page 15, so once you've compressed your photo or whatever you needed to do, then all you have to do is just click on your browse device here, scroll down to whatever photo you want, and let's say it's this one right here. I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag it over and then let go. See, I can drag and drop the photo. And here is the picture. So that's how you can load it. Or you can click on the picture and then hit the open button there. Then in step 3B on page 15, I have the option to make this picture, because if you notice this picture is larger than the frame. I need to kind of condense it or compress it, make it smaller. Well, when you slide it, if you slide it to the right, it's going to make it larger. It's going to zoom in. So in most, maybe 95% of the time, you're going to be going to your left. And if you notice, it kind of fits it pretty good. The left and right works fine. The top and bottom will be cut off. But it still looks pretty good. So what you might want to do is maybe just go like this and cut the bottom part off. And then, if you happen to have loaded this picture upside down, you have these rotating arrows to go clockwise or counterclockwise. If I uploaded the wrong photo, I can click on Remove Photo. Are you sure you want to remove that? And upload the correct photo, so you can actually go ahead and do that. But I'm going to go ahead and keep that photo. And then I'm going to click on the Add Property Photo button. And now, the photo has been saved. It's going to show up in this transaction. The only two people that will see this photo is you, and if you're using Form Simplicity's collaboration feature and they open up that email, they'll see that too. So only you and, I hate to use this word, but that's the only way I can explain it, the collaborator, okay? All right? So that would be the only two. So make sure you don't put a picture of your cat here. Okay? Otherwise, they're going to say, what kind of property does that look like? Okay. So that's what you want to keep in mind. All right? So that was page 15. Any questions on that? On page 16, talks about the import property data button. Has anybody imported from MLS or from the tax? This is perfect for that. That's your time saver here. Very much time saver. And I'm hoping it's my account that's giving me grief. because I was trying to do something during the break and somehow it wasn't working for me, but hopefully it's working for you all here. Because I do tend to send an email tonight to the programmer about something here that's not working right. Okay, so when you click on Import Property Data, you have two sources of places that you can import your information from. Now, I have access to more than one data feed here in Idaho, so you're not going to see that. What you're probably going to see is the properties from Intermountain MLS. Okay? You don't see these other ones unless you're a member of that MLS. Okay? I have access to those because I have to teach in those associations. So for here, all you have to do is to enter in the MLS number. So the MLS number here is this. That's all you have to do in step number 3 on page 16. Then click on the Import MLS Data button. Page 17 shows you the results. If this is the property that I want, then all I have to do is click on Select. And now on step 5, I get to preview this information. Now on your screenshot on page 17, this is only a Florida screenshot, and if you had this type of feature available here, then you should be able to import the photos. But it could be, the reason why we didn't have this feature, it could be that your association is not allowing us to do that. Because as you all know, photos, the narratives of a listing, and a couple of other things, they are copyrighted according to your MLS rules. Now in Florida, they gave us blanket permission, all the MLSs, to do this. But the state here did not give us the ability to do that. That's why you don't have that option to import the picture, because of the copyright issue, okay? And that's also the reason why they won't let the brokers upload the logo for the company in the Florida form, the Idaho form, because your forms are copyrighted. All right, see, so we have to kind of follow what we're told to do, okay? So this is an example of how I would import this information from MLS. Here we have the property information, the listing information, the seller landlord information along with the brokerage, the buyer broker, the listing broker, and the listing agent, and then here I would put in my buyer information if I was going to make an offer here. Now, the only time that I would import from MLS is if I'm writing a contract, if I'm filling out a buyer's representation agreement, because I would be putting in my buyers here, and all of that, it would be filled in automatically along with the information coming from MLS directly into the buyer's representation agreement form. So this would be a great scenario for that instance right there. But if not, if you're working on the listing side of the transaction, then you want to go ahead and do the tax search. And what you should see as part of your tax search is your Intermountain MLS drop-down. Now, I'm hoping it's not affecting you guys, but when I tried to do this, it didn't let me import. But all you should be doing in here is typing in the house number and the name of the street, and then maybe put the city name. And make sure that you're in the right county. Okay, that's why I asked before the class started, what county are we in? But here, Ada is what it is, and then I should be able to go in here and click on Define Tax Data. But for some odd reason, I'm not getting anything here. Did anybody ever do a tax search? No? It's always been, you did a tax search, sir? And it worked fine? So it could be my account. See, sometimes they don't give me stuff, and therefore it's not working correctly. So I didn't even think about letting them know about it ahead of time. I should have played around with it before. But anyway, when you fill the tax data information in, all you should do is just put in the house number the street name, and the city. And maybe not even the city. But the important thing that you have to remember is you select the correct county. I even double checked, making sure I tried different counties, but it's all gave me the wrong information anyway. So all you have to do is select the correct county that you're in. It will always be Ada as the default because that's the first county in alphabetical order. So all you have to do is click on that and then click on Find Tax Data, and it's going to give you that one-line result. You click on Select and it opens up the tax information there, okay? But what I'm going to do for my purposes here, so I can at least show you how the import does work, I'm going to go ahead and just import this from MLS for this time, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And by the way, on page 18 and 19 shows you how you would import from the tax. All right? Like I said, it could be my training account, because sometimes they don't update, or if they update form simplicity, it affects something else. So I have to get in contact with them. As long as it works for you guys, that's all I care about, okay? Because if you were saying, hey, I tried it and it didn't work, then we got an issue, of course. But as long as you're able to import from MLS or from the tax, then you should be good to go. Because that way, on the listing side of the transaction, you definitely want to pull in the tax. If it's on the buyer side of the contract, of the transaction, you definitely want to pull in from MLS. And what I always used to do when I was a realtor and doing form simplicity like this with listings, I would always pull up a printout of MLS, and I would also pull up a printout of the tax. That way, if there was ever a discrepancy and I made the changes and somebody says, hey, that's not what, well, according to the tax record, that's what it says. And this is more accurate than what you've put in MLS. All right? So it's always kind of like a CYA for you. That's kind of what I would do. So I'm going to go ahead and just use this button right here. And then I'm going to select this. And I'm going to go ahead and save that information to the transaction. And now on page 19 and 18 and 19 shows you how you would import the tax. And note here, this is importing from MLS, and you see how it automatically completes that information. It would be the same thing with the tax. Now, notice over here, I do not have to click on the Save Data button here. Not required. If all you're doing is just importing. Okay? There's no need to do that. However, and you may want to write this somewhere, it doesn't matter on the actual transaction, whatever. But when you go into here and you expand this, and let's say, oh, when I went there, it wasn't a 3-bedroom, it was actually a 4-bedroom. They didn't count it right. So then I can go ahead and change that 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom and change that bathroom to a 3.5 bathroom. And definitely the association fee is much more than $200. It's actually $20,000 a year. And then at that time, you're going to click on the Save Data button. When you're importing, no need to. But if you're making any changes once it's been imported, then you want to click on the Save Data button. Because if you change something and you don't do that and you click on the Show Less Data button, everything you've done goes away. So just remember, click on the Save Data button, and now that's going to stay. Now also what you want to go ahead and do is if you're working on the buyer representation agreement form or the seller's representation agreement form, you can automatically put the dates in here. And remember we talked about if you synchronize your Google Calendar, you have that all set up here as well. So let's say this is going to be a short agreement, and that's what's going to appear. And of course, you have to remember, click on the Save Data button every time you add dates to it. And then once you have your Google Calendar activated, it's going to now synchronize those two dates with the dates in your calendar. So you'll have that little entry entered for you. You don't have to even do anything. It's did it for you. Okay? Any questions on what we're talking about here so far? You notice here I'm in a workflow, right? I created a transaction, I created folders, I added a photo, and then I've imported my information. Notice I'm not typing anything in my contracts yet. We haven't gone to that part yet. The next section I want to talk about is on page 20. And page 20 talks about the transaction participants. And in the transaction participants, now since I pulled this information from MLS, it didn't give me the seller information. Now if I pulled it from the tax, in most cases the seller information would appear here. Okay? It's just that unfortunately I can't show that to you. Alright? So what I can do on page 20 is to click on, if you're working on the listing side of the transaction, I would click on Add Seller Parties. Or if you're working on the buyer side of the transaction, click on the Add Buyer Party. But I'm working on the seller side, so I'm going to click on this button right here, which takes you to page 21. Now, one thing I do want to mention here, which is something that members have requested us to include, and we're also going to be enhancing this a little bit more. And what I'm referring to here is add additional seller parties. How many of us have sometimes more than 2 sellers when they do a listing, right? Some of us have. Sometimes when you do a trust, there's also multiple representatives there, not just 2, maybe 3 or 4, okay? Or maybe on the buyer side, you have a family that's going to be wanting to have their names on the deed. And let's say it's the mom, dad, 2 daughters, and a son. So they all are over 18, 21, whatever, and they're all going to be there. So in case something happens to the mom and dad, it's automatically going to go to the kids. See, so they want to make this happen. So what you can do on page 21 is, in the second sentence there, if you click on the Add Additional Seller Parties, you have the ability to add up to 8 sellers or 8 buyers. Okay, that's what that means. So you can actually add additional parties here. Now,
So did that change from 6 to 8?
it'll change from 2 to 8. So you have 6 additional sellers.
Oh,
So it'll be the 2 plus 6 additional ones. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, this is good because when you go into eSign, you'll have those sellers or buyers already included when you're putting them into the eSign session. However, there is still the actual there is a little drawback though. Question I'm going to ask is this: how many sellers will automatically be included in a seller listing, in a seller representation agreement? 2, right? What about if you had, for buyers, how many buyers can you put in your buyer's representation agreement form? 2, right? But those other 3 buyers that I just talked, we said 5 buyers, so the other 3 buyers will still be included in the list of signers, but eSign is only going to take the first 2, which would be the mom and dad. The other 3 that will be brought over into eSign will have to be dragged and dropped, because that's nothing I can do about it. Now, if your forms allowed for 5 buyers or 5 sellers, then those first 5 would be automatically there. But you only have for 2 on either side of the transaction. But this at least saves you the time of having to invite them in eSign, those additional people that need to sign. You see what I'm saying? You just eliminated a step here by doing this. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so now That's that. But now I'm not gonna, I don't have anybody here. Now what they're also gonna plan on doing, which I think is a great idea, and I think they must have heard your suggestion, I think. They're also going to include as part of the transaction participants, not just the sellers and buyers, but maybe title companies, lenders that need to be included in the form itself. You know, like I know I don't know, and you guys are gonna have to help me out here, but in your buyer's representation agreement, do you have like an escrow agent or a lender information that you would put in where you make the deposit, you know, escrow deposit kind of a thing? You'll be able to put that person's information, it will auto-populate that form. I kind of like that. So that's something that's still in the works, but I heard that that's probably going to be the next enhancement to this screen here, which I think is a great idea. But I'm going to remove those. I'm just going to leave it alone like it is. Now, to the left of this is what we see as add from contacts. In fact, let's do this. I have 3:20 on my clock right now. Let's go ahead and take our 10-minute break, and we'll stay on page 21 right now, and we'll come back in 10 minutes, and we'll continue on with the transaction participants section. So let's go ahead and do that.
Class goes till 4:30?
Say it again?
It goes till 4:30?
We'll be here till 6. Page 22. The add from contacts button here, when you click on that, that takes you directly to the contact screen. Yeah, see,
Recording in progress.
they really changed these screens on me. They did some updates overnight, so it's like, okay, some of the stuff looks kind of new to me, so just bear with me here if I look kind of puzzled up here. But the first thing you have the ability to do is you can add from contacts, and when you see the contacts, it's grouped by 5 at a time. So what you can do is you can actually add contacts into your transaction participants. That's why I mentioned in the other class when we were talking about adding contacts into Form Simplicity, you may want to go ahead and do that because that way you have all of that information all there. This is in case when you're pulling in from the tax, it doesn't give you sometimes it should give you the owner's name, but maybe you may have one that sometimes it doesn't pop up or maybe incorrect. So let's say that for our purposes here, we're going to go ahead and add our true sellers of this property. And the people who own this property, the husband's name is Algorithm. So now Al is listed down here. And then I'm going to click on Add from Contacts. Oh yeah, they really changed this. So I got, just bear with me here because it's kind of weird how it looks. Okay, then the wife's name, her name is Olgarithm, and I'm going to select her name. Oh, I see what I'm doing now. Okay. And now, see what they've done is you used to have a whole list of people. Now you can just go ahead and add them as you need to. I see how this works. Okay. So I'm learning just like you guys are. Notice though that Olga, I got an idea. Let's do this from the beginning. So I'm going to remove Al's name out of here. Okay, so let me just save this for sure. Okay. So let's start this whole process one more time. So if you're going to add from contacts, all we're going to do is we're going to type in, search for the name. There we have Algorithm. And he's going to have party number 1. See, when you click on this drop-down menu, you have these other choices here as well. So if he's not going to be party number 1, but party number 2, according to the deed, then you can change that party role to read him to be whatever transaction role he should be in. And then I'm going to add his wife. Her name is Olga, and click on Olgarithm, and now we've added her as party number 2. And of course, I'm going to add myself as the agent, and here I am, and I'm in here as the agent, and I'm also going to put my broker's information. He goes by the name of Just In Case. So here we have the people. Actually, I'm the broker and Justin's the agent. okay? Or if I made a mistake and I should be the agent, guess what? I can always switch it. See, these drop-down menus allow you to switch things around as you need to. And of course, in any of these drop-downs, if there's a work email that you want to send it to instead of his home email, you can go ahead and set that up. So let me see here. So you can actually go ahead and just do that. Once, and if you made a mistake, you didn't choose the correct person, you have the remove button here. So you can see they've changed everything from the screenshot on page 22. So I mean, I'm going to have to redo these handouts again with the new screenshots. But it's the same process that we see here. They just added, instead of having those transaction parties listed, it just adds them on per line. That's kind of what they just did here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Add Contacts button here. So now if you notice, it added Al, and make sure that in the email address that you put their email address in there, because again, that's going to make the transition from Form Simplicity into eSign efficient and smooth. Okay? Make sure of that. And then party number 2, Olga. And then you have the brokerage name. I'm going to change that brokerage name because it pulled that name from where? The MLS. So I'm going to change it because if you're doing this the right way with the tax import, then it should automatically have what was auto-populated in the seller representation agreement form. It would automatically have that information pretty much pre-filled. So I'm just going to go ahead and just change this information here. Okay? And get rid of this. And then the seller, the broker, that's my broker's information, and I'm going to change that email address to reflect the address that I would like it to appear. And then the agent's information is mine, and I'm going to make this mixed case, so it's not all uppercase. And that is going to go to me. So here we have all of the people involved in this transaction. You're going to click on the Save Seller Information, and this here is the third way of creating a transaction. If both Al and Olga were brand new, okay, then therefore it would have the option for me to have that show up as Add New Contact, because I met them for the first time. But since I already knew them from past transactions, it automatically check marks the update contact. And since just in case is my new broker now, because the other broker retired, it added him for the first time because I've never had Justin in my contact section. So now, you see how it shows that Justin is now going to be added in my contact section as a new contact. Does that make sense? So this right here is going to show you how you would add a new contact. So if I met Olga and Al for the first time, it would say the same thing, add new contact. And that's how I get to add new contacts while I create a transaction. Does that make sense? Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and save it. And now all of those contacts are now saved. So that's what we did on page 23. We clicked on the Add Contacts button, and then step 9, we clicked on the Save Seller Information, and then on page 24 shows you how we actually were able to save the contacts here. Okay? Any questions on the Transaction Participants section? Page 25. Now, I don't know if anybody here is following, well, I see, yeah, I do see a few people online with us. When you are in the transaction detail page, how many of us see this section here called Broker Review? I see a bunch of heads going this way. That means, you know what that tells me is this, that it could be that you might be using form simplicity for your forms, for your transactions, but your broker purchased, once again, purchased a program that allows you to submit the paperwork through that particular program, okay? Now, form simplicity has a module just like that, but it's included in form simplicity. The broker does not have to purchase anything. The agent does not have to purchase anything. So, what I'm basically going here is I'm going to log out as an agent for a moment, and I'm going to sign in as a broker. Because the broker has the option, as part of their arsenal, I guess, right over here, there's a broker dashboard. That's automatic with the broker. Any brokers here? We have one. Okay, couple. Two. Do I hear three? Sold at 2. Okay. So here, what we're going to go ahead and mention here is that the broker has the option to click on this broker dashboard. They can actually create checklists as to what type of files the agents need to present them. So here, I'm going to just do one which I did. I'll just use this one, doesn't matter. So here, I click on this, and the broker has the option to make certain files required and certain files applicable, if applicable. Because like, for example, lead-based paint disclosure would be if applicable, because not all properties were built before 1978, right? So that you would set that all up. And the broker has the ability to auto-apply the checklist, the review checklist, to any of the packages that were created by the broker. Because then the broker can the agent can actually assign that review checklist directly into the transaction. So once the broker creates a checklist, then I'm going to sign out of this, and then once the broker does all of that, I'm going to sign in as the agent now. Then I can go ahead as the agent, I can go ahead and click on the Add Review button, type in the name of the, in fact, let me show you that. Let's do the address as my review name. And then I'm going to select the review checklist. And then click on Add to the checklist. And this is what I'm required to provide. Okay, now I'm going to get out of this for a moment because I need to save some files here, because you cannot add forms. It's got to be transaction files. Okay, so let's say I'm going to copy these files to the file section, and I'm going to make believe that they are signed. Okay, so all of these, let's say, have been signed. So then all I have to do is to click on here, and then click on here, and now select my files. So I'm going to click on this, and click on Add from File. And so now I just temporarily put it in the queue for it to go to the broker. And then I can go ahead and select another form. Oh, I chose the wrong one. So let's say I made a mistake. Click on X, because I put it in the wrong spot. See, and I can go ahead and click on this and select the agency one. Hit Add File. Click on this, select the seller representation agreement. I can also write a note to my broker because the client did not want to complete the property disclosure form. See, so I can actually write a note, whatever it is that the note is. And then click on Add File. Now, the lead-based paint disclosure is not going to be applicable here because the property was built in 1999. So I don't need to do that. It's not applicable in this. And then I can also add additional backup from either my computer or what's not been listed by the broker. So I'm going to include, let's say, the input form. And then I can go ahead and put that in there. And then of course I can change and use the file name, or I can give it a different name. So let's say we're going to call this data input form. And then click on add checklist item. So see, the broker doesn't have to pay extra for this. And I know these types of modules are not cheap. I mean, based on my conversations with members in Florida. And I've been getting I've been getting a lot of requests from brokerages because they feel that this works just as good as what they're paying for. And if you feel something like that would be beneficial to everyone in the office, I can do a separate class, what they call a broker transaction management class, and that way I can show the broker how they can create a checklist. Then I can show the agents on how to submit the paperwork, and then thirdly, how the broker can review it and accept it as a completed document, or submit, excuse me, okay? So I can do a separate program for that individual office. And I don't know if I've given my email address, but I'm going to go ahead and give it to you here. I don't have enough cards to give out because I need to have it for tomorrow's tech fair, but I'll give you my email address. It's K-A-Z as in zebra, C as in Charlie, at formsimplicity.com. CASC@formsimplicity.com, and I'll be very happy to schedule a webinar with you all, whoever might be interested. It is a great module for you to work with. Cool. So that was page 25, 26, and 27. And then on page 28, you can also put in your commission details, so that way you know what the price is, what the commission was, and the like. And then also there is a review history section in the broker review, as well as on the broker dashboard, where both of you can see what you've all been doing within the transaction.
I appreciate that one on 28. That saves a lot of paperwork or time to go through, and when you're doing your tax review.
Are you talking about doing the broker review stuff?
Well, the commission details,
Yeah.
on that.
Yep.
Because you got to remember back on those transactions.
Yep,
What
absolutely.
you did.
Yep, correct. Cool. Let's jump over to page 29. Page 29 talks about the transaction history. That's all the way down here under the history section. So you can kind of see what's been happening with this transaction. And the last thing that has occurred is at 3:42. Now, if you notice, the timestamp here is Mountain Time. If I didn't change my time zone from Eastern to Mountain Time, it would show 5:42. See, so that way you've got to keep. That's what the reason why I was pushing this morning, to make sure that your time zone gets automatically changed to the Mountain Time zone. All right. Next page I want to talk about. Okay, it's not in your handout, so I want to mention something because I know we talked about collaboration briefly last class. If you notice down here under collaboration, there's a feature here called collaboration. When you click on the collaboration section, what you get to do here is now you activate your collaboration. You're starting to collaborate with your customer. Think of collaboration to be the same thing like sports. You always have the general manager, and then you have the player and his player or her player agent. And they try to collaborate to really stamp out what they would like to have in their agreement. Okay? So then what you want to go ahead and do is now collaborate with them. So that's exactly what you're doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on collaborate, And when you do that, I'm going to invite certain people to collaborate with me. This would be pretty good for a contract. When you're doing the buyer representation agreement form, that way you can go between you and the other agent. Okay, that could be a good thing. So how do you start the process? And of course, there is a help video on this as well. All you have to do is to type in the name or the email address, and it only will go to one email address. You can't type the same email address twice. It doesn't accept it. It's either going to be the name and that one email address. Then I'm going to type in the subject, please review as an example. And then I'm going to state here, please review the following documents and make any comments deemed necessary. And then I'm going to go ahead and send the link. So now you've done your job. Not quite, because what else is missing? All we did was just send them an email. What do we need to include? The forms, right? So then the next step would be to click on right here, Manage Documents. And now I can select whatever I want, whatever forms I want, and also whatever files I want to include.
What page are you on?
It's not in your handout. This is something I'm just, because somebody was asking me this question, and this wasn't part of the class, but I just wanted to show you that that's how you would do that. And of course, if you go to the Help Center, it shows you exactly the same thing, okay? But what here it's showing you here now is that I'm selecting my forms and my files, and then I hit the X. But I know what you're all thinking. That's kind of backwards, isn't it, Kaz? You're saying the email out first, then the forms. Actually, it's kind of like a safety thing for you. Because if we did it where you select your form first, and then you send the email out, and then you go, oops, I didn't mean to send that form, now you can't retrieve it. It's like, it's gone. You know, there's nothing, you can't undo what you sent out. At least, after sending out the email, I can still go back in here, manage my documents, and then uncheck the forms I really didn't want them to see. Okay, that's more for brokerage forms. I mean, internal forms. So that way you can go ahead and go back and manage your documents. So now it's gone out to the customer. So now I'm going to show you, this is what they're going to receive. So it's going to come from you via Form Simplicity. Here's the link. And now they open this up, and they can actually go in here, open up the form. They can't change the form. And what they can do once it comes up at a computer near us, and notice that, let's see, oh, there's $1 million cancellation fee. Please remove the cancellation fee of $1 million.
Make it $1 billion for Elon.
Okay, so here we post it. And then maybe something else, let's say, oh, compensation. No, change compensation to 21%. That's a nice, that's good dream, but that's okay. So anyway, that's what you're going to say. So here, post comment. So what they're doing is they're making comments on the form. They can't make any changes to the forms, but I can at least make, the customer can at least make comments. So now, guess what? I'm going to now play the role of the agent, and if I check my mail, hopefully it should come here. It may not work because it's an invalid email here. What it's going to show is that there's a comment that was changed on the form. And how did we get that done? It was done through the preferences, and remember under the email notifications, when a comment is shared on the form. So you're going to get an email notification. Of course, like I said, I have a dummy email address, so it's not going to work, but that's where it would go to, and you'll get notified that something was in there. So then all you have to do is to go back into the transaction, and then I'm going to open up the seller representation agreement. Now I'm the agent doing this. I'm going to scroll down here, change that 20% to 21% as per the customer. Thank you very much. And then I'm going to eliminate the $1 million cancellation fee. Click on the Save button. Now I tell the seller to go ahead and take a look at the link once again. So now I'm going to click on I'm now the customer, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this link again. And here we see that come on, we're almost there. We're going to see that the 21% is up there, and then we eliminated the $1 million. So that change is real time. You know, as things happen, you don't have to wait like next day to have it occur. And to finish this up, close this up. Then to finish this whole thing up, all the comments that you have, you can view. So if you sent it to multiple people, this is exactly what you have. So if you're ready to sign the agreement, and the seller said, wait a minute, what are you talking about 21%? I didn't agree with that. Well, that's what you wrote here. I'm putting in what you said. Okay? So at least you have proof of what was discussed on a contract or on a listing. On I keep forgetting, you guys, seller representation agreement or the buyer's representation agreement. Okay? So that's exactly how that works. And then when you archive this transaction, you have history. So, and plus, there's no need for me to mark up. I have a nice clean contract. See, that's why, because I know in Florida, I don't know how you all do it up here, but when you do markups, you stay with the markups. Down in Florida, if you have a lot of markups, they redo the contract and have them sign it again. But that's up to the individual agent and broker. All right? But here, I eliminated that right here. It's all commented in an email. It's included in my form simplicity, and then we are good to go there. Any questions on collaboration? I know it's not in your handout. This is just something that somebody had brought up a question regarding that, and I just kind of wanted to show you how that works.
So under collaboration, they can send you emails, but they're not ready to sign documents.
Right, there's no signing being done here. All it is just collaborating. We're just passing it back. Huh? Conversation, yeah, that's what you're doing. You're just, the people are telling you what to do with the form. Like if I'm working with, let's say I'm the buyer's agent, you're the seller's agent, so we collaborate. You talk to your seller, I'll talk to my buyer, and we're doing this all via comments.
Secure text.
Exactly. And then you have history. Both, you know, that way you know this is what you discussed.
Destroyed it down on a piece of paper on a 6-part folder. This makes it a little easier.
Yeah, you don't have to have paper. No paper.
Save a tree, baby.
Yeah, I'm all for that. And then last but not least, before we go into the e-sign program, again, this is also not in your training handout, but I do want to just mention this in passing, is that you have the task section. This is Form Simplicity's task management tool. You can have, and I'm going to get rid of some of this for a moment. I got to clean my task stuff. Got so many here. Okay, good. So, what you can do here is this. When you're first going in here to do a task, you can do a task one of two ways. One way would be click on Create New Task. And this is the manual way. So here I'm going to type in Seller's Tasks. Click on Save New Task. Bingo. We've created a list. Now we have this button here called Add New Task. You're going to give it a name. So let's say Sign Seller Rep Agreement. I'm just going to abbreviate here. And of course, who am I going to assign this to? I'm going to be in charge of that. So I can head and select my name. And then hit Save Task. Oh, and I've got to select my either specific date, or I can use a transaction date. Say 3 days, 3 calendar days before the listing start date. So you can do things like that if you want. But I'm going to go ahead and say that we're going to do this for the 23rd. Hit Save and New. Now I'm going to add another task. Let's say that we're going to have schedule a handyman. Now, I have a handyman that I have, and he's in my Form Simplicity contact section because I added him when we did the contacts. And the person's name who I'm working with, his name is, no, I don't have him in there. Okay, so his name is, I'll just keep it simple. His name is Drew A. Blank. So he's my handyman. And then I can have him take care of the plumbing, and he needs to get it done by the 20th. That's tomorrow. But instead of saying schedule handyman, I could probably say fix water leak under the sink in kitchen. Okay? And then I can click on Save Task. See, so I can assign different people to do different works. Now, I want to also show you one more thing. Let's say that I have sign on property. And I don't have a sign man in my contact section. Guess what? I can go ahead and click on Add New Contact. Let's try that again. Add New Contact, and then put in the person's name. So let's say that his name is Barry Ott, and he can be reached at this address right here. And then click on Create Contact. So this is the fourth way of creating contacts through the tasks. See, so we did the manual one and the import in the first class. In this class, we did it through the transaction participants and through here. See, so you have 4 ways of adding contacts, but this would be more for your service vendors than for your transaction participants. And then again, you can go ahead and set that up like so. Now, both of them, once tasks have been created, they will get an email from Form Simplicity. So here, I'm going to open this up. And here it says, hey Drew, you've been assigned a task by agent student user number 2 from the training office. There's a leak, water leak under the sink in the kitchen at this address. And it needs to be done by tomorrow. Well, I'm on vacation. Well, I'll come back from vacation and fix this up now. So then, all they do, I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm just goofing around here. We're getting kind of close to the end of the class. So anyway, let's say he fixes it. He comes in, he gets that email. Okay, I can take care of that first thing tomorrow. So then tomorrow comes around, then he can go into Form Simplicity and click on this, which will grant him access to Form Simplicity's portal. He can scroll down, click on this, and put the date as being tomorrow. update the task. Now, in the meanwhile, after he does that, then guess what? Remember we talked about, once again, in the preferences section in the email notification. You're going to get an email notification once that assigned task has been completed. Now, what about if the service provider doesn't click on it to complete it? Well, then you can go and complete it yourself. It doesn't really matter. But the purpose of this is to send it out to the people, let them complete the process, and that way you'll get notified when they take care of that. Okay? Any questions on the tasks?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we can do that in our own transactions, but as brokers, can we do that in our agents' transactions?
To create tasks, you mean? Yes. As brokers, what you can do is you can build a task list template where you can actually say, hey, these are the list of tasks that you would be needing for this. There's a list of tasks that you need for this. So what you would do as brokers is that, see here, it's going to give you the option to be doing this as a brokerage-wide. So then I just can give this a test. I'll just say, I'll just give this a test. And then you can automatically apply that task template to either one of your forms packages, so that way it will auto-apply for any residential listing package or any buyer's package that you may have created, or any criteria that's been selected by them. So let's say that every time you create a transaction, you want it to be residential, you want it to be listing, and it's always going to start with a new status. So as soon as you set that up that way, every time a transaction is created, that task template will automatically appear. Does that make sense? And then click on Save New Task Template. But then what you have to do, though, is you have to create the task. And so therefore, you're going to create the task name. And now, of course, you're not going to assign it to anyone because you haven't created a transaction with this template yet. You see what I'm saying? This is a template, not a transaction that you're adding. So it's either going to be you as an assignee or unassigned, because you don't know who you're going to assign this, because you may have multiple signed people and you're all over the place in the state. See, so you're going to have to find that signed person and assign it at the time you create the transaction. Okay, so then what I can do as an agent, okay, come on. I can now go in here as the agent and watch this. Click on tasks. I can load the task, and it's either going to be that the broker created or my own. See, so if you create for your agents, then all they have to do is just check mark the box, select the dates, and that's automatically going to be included there. So you can have total control as to what you think certain tasks need to be for certain type of transactions and certain packages. So this eliminates, again, a lot of clicking. And also you could put at least some of the responsibility maybe for the broker. At least the broker knows this is what you want your agents to do. I know if I was a broker, that's what I would do.
Because I have it like on paper form now.
Yeah.
The date of when they...
But now you can do it all here, set this up and just tell your agents, hey, load these tasks in, but here they are, I created them for you. All right? That eliminates, again, paper. Okay, let's go ahead and move on from pages 30 to page 38. What that section is referring to, those pages, is referring to your command line here. So on page 31, it talks about the print button here. So all you got to do is just check, hit the print button if you were going to do paper. I mean, some of the stuff I think should be pretty straightforward. If you want to send it to a customer who doesn't want to do e-sign, but they want you to email it to them and they will print it and then sign it by hand, because that specific customer likes to use the quill pen and be able to dunk it into the ink bottle. So they want to be able to keep doing that. So then you can go ahead and set that up there. If anybody here does faxes, I think we had a couple of hands raised. You can always fax it back to them, okay? And then, of course, you can, oh, this is a cool feature. How many people have where their offers have been rejected? Oh. And then all of a sudden you have a new buyer. Now, what do you normally do if that happens? Like if it got rejected here in Form Simplicity, what do you all do? Do you all create a new transaction? There's a much easier way. So let's make believe that this is stuff regarding for the buyer. Well, it got rejected. So you know what you can do? Take this, check mark all the boxes that you need for all of the forms, click on copy to a transaction, give it a name, give it the address, and then copy all of that to a transaction. All you need to do is what? Change the names. Everything else stays the same, right? Pretty cool. It just saved me all day. Because I'm a slow typist, remember that, right? So here, I just saved myself half a day at least. So this is a good time saver that a lot of members are not aware of. And that, believe it or not, is found on page 37. So this is a great way of saving time once again. Yes?
But that is creating a new transaction. So
Correct.
you can't copy it into an already existing
Correct.
transaction. Is
That's
there
correct.
any way of copying it?
As of right now, that's a common question that I always get.
Feedback.
I was good. That was my next thing. You read my mind. Click on that feedback button
Yeah.
and make that comment. I agree. Because there's no way of merging the transactions. Yeah.
It'd be super nice.
Well, like I said, the more feedback we get, and I know for a fact they do listen to you guys.
Right.
So I would say, let them have it.
Give it to the geeks.
Give it to the geeks. Oh, but I'm being recorded. I gotta watch what I say.
They like to be called geeks. They have a squad.
Well, actually, we do have a squad. We do have a squad of geeks, but we don't have a geek squad.
No? No fans?
No what?
Fans?
No bands. No. I have only one fan there though, and it keeps turning around and around, and it oscillates. That's the only fan I got. Okay, but that should be a good thing for you to have here. Okay. Let's go to page 39, and what we're going to do now is talk for the rest of the time that we're here together to do e-sign. Now the version of e-sign I'm going to be using here is the current version 2.0. The current version is 1.0, but the updated version I'm going to call this as 2.0. And as you will see, there is some difference between the two. The learning curve I'm looking at, based on what I've worked with 1.0 and 2.0, I'm going to say the learning curve is about 3%, which is not bad at all. Because I'm going to show you when we go into the new version of e-sign what the current version is, how many steps it took compared to what the new version is. Because there is going to be a reduction in steps. So, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do one form and one file for our purposes here. Check mark the box for seller representation agreement, and also click on the new listing checklist. Then I'm going to go ahead and click on e-sign. So that's what we did on page 39 in step number 3. And once I click on e-sign, which now is going to take us to page 40, I'm hoping that when you get this screen, you should see your signing participants here. If you do not, the reason for that is because you're missing their email address. If there's no email address, they're not there. And think of it logically. If you're not going to include the email addresses in there, that's telling e-sign, well, I guess e-sign's saying, well, I guess they don't want me to email the signature stuff. That's why it's not showing up. And then I have to do the extra step of inviting them in eSign. So by doing it this way and putting in their email address, there you go. So I'm going to go ahead and check mark all of these boxes here. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on the eSign 2.0, like you see on page 40. And now it's going to take us to page 41. Now in the current version of eSign, there's how many steps? 6. Well, it's not 6 here. Now the first screen that you see popping up on page 41, step number 1, that is your designated signer. This normally in the old version appears in step number 3 because you know that window always popped up after you assign the documents. So here it's coming up now. All right, so that is the old step 3. Now it's step point 5. Okay, kind of a thing. So all you have to do now is assign the signers. Okay, that's what I've done here. So that's what we see on page 41 in step number 1. Then I'm going to click on the next button, which, and now step number 2, by the way, it didn't come up here. But the only time step number 2 comes up is if you did not select a signer for one of them. Let's say I did the seller 1, let's say I did seller 1, agent, and broker. Well, there's no seller number 2, but I'm still going to get this message that you see on page 41. Hey, you forgot somebody. Well, because there is no seller 2. That's why I have to keep moving right along. So in that case, you would just say yes, remove all the placeholders where seller number 2 would normally be signing. That then takes us to page 42. Now, here we're going to go ahead and put in the title, which automatically populated that from the transaction. But you do have to enter in a session title. I did put a request that they put in here where it says session title required. Because if you bypass that, it's going to come back and say you can't go forward until that's filled in. So I kind of asked them to ask eSign that after the session title, put required. Because you have to fill something there. So either you can put in the transaction name, or you can put in the client's name, or whatever you think you need to put in that subject line. That's what that means. Now, I also made another request for eSign, and I'll explain right now. As you can see, you see how my email signature appears here? Where did that come from? That came from Preferences, General Settings, Email Signature. So once I filled that in, it automatically populated in eSign. And also did the same thing in the old eSign. Okay? So that's that. Now, what I don't like about that field is that a lot of members don't realize that they can actually type messages there. And that's, I think, is a problem. And I made a suggestion to our Form Simplicity programmer to tell eSign, why don't you make like a little bit bigger and then have the email signature show up like that. So that way it knows I have to write a message. Because I wouldn't have known I could write a message there. And when I was first beta testing, I didn't even know that. And that's where I said, hey, I think it'd be a great idea, because if I have a problem, then I can see all of the members are going to have the problem. So this is where you can now go ahead and put in your message. I'm just going to put in just something here. All right?
Is there a limited space there?
Nope, because what I can do is I can bring this,
Okay,
you see how I can still keep on going.
thank you.
So if you want to write a thesis, this is a great time to do it. Okay? But yeah, so that's, it's pretty cool. All right?
No love letters.
No love letters, nope, nope. All right, so that was page 41, and then, page 42, still continuing. If you wanted to, you also have the options. You can actually set reminders, just like we did today, like we do currently. And of course, you can decide how how many days you would like to send them the reminders. You can go up to 30 days. And it's going to be once a day. Okay? So you decide on that. And of course, you can also decide on when it expires. Okay, so that's that. Page 43. Now, by the way, this screen that you see here is step number 1 of the old version. This here is step number 2 of the old version. And I haven't clicked on next. Okay, so that's step number 2. And then here, this is step number 3. So we've combined 3 steps into one screen. All right? Now, on page 43, talks about the Recipients section. Notice that all four people are signers. And guess what? Notice up here it says recipient ordering, and that's in step number 2 there. If you turn on the ordering, which is right now saying yes, that means it's going to go in numerical order, one signer at a time. So if there's a person that's holding it up, well, it's going to hold it up. If you want them all to get it at the same time, then you want to click on this slider and put it no. And that way, all of them will get it simultaneously. Okay? Another thing I want to mention here is this. Does anybody here have a transaction coordinator in their office that they need to get a copy of the signed documents? And you know that in step number 1, there is a field called CC email, and then you put their email address so it goes automatically to them, right? Well, you're probably saying, well, where is that? Well, it is here. What you have to do is, first of all, enter in the email address of the person, or enter the name of the person by clicking on over here. And then if, let's say who you know is let's say it's Shannon Doa, she's your transaction coordinator. And now, over here on page 43 in step number 1, in your drop down, there is that CC recipient. So that means that at the end, she's going to get a copy after all of those 4 signers sign. Does anybody here have sometimes you have to send it to an attorney to review. Does anybody have that? But let's say you did. Say it again? No? Are you don't want to see? Okay, doesn't matter?
No,
Fine.
I said, haha, funny.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What you can do though is, let's say this transaction requires the attorney to review it first. So I can go ahead and either add a new recipient that I never had in eSign, because the Form Simplicity contact section and the eSign contact section are not the same. The only way that the email, the eSign address book will contain contacts from Form Simplicity is if you include them in an eSign session. That's the only way they get in there, okay? So, let's say though, I have an attorney, her name is Ann Chovy, and she needs to review it. So I can go ahead and click on Review It. Or maybe send it to the broker and have him review it, and he's not going to sign it, whatever. But notice that Ann is all the way at the bottom. Well, I don't want her to review it after everyone signs it. So I can get this, I can move it up here, and she's going to be number 1. And she can review it first and then say, okay guys, decline, don't sign because I see a problem with this contract. See, so that could be something for that to happen. All right? So that way you can at least see that happen. I'm going to go ahead and remove these by clicking on the delete button. That's what these options are for. So if you click on this ellipsis, it's going to give you the option to do edit or delete the contact information. Okay? So that's what you see on page 43. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to have them all go at the same time. Which then takes us to the Documents section on page 44. Oh, sorry. forgot one more thing here. On page 44, in step number 5, if I click on edit on any of these contacts, that's the screen you're going to see. As of right now, you can set up authentication for each of your signers to make sure that it is secure and that each signer is supposed to sign what they're supposed to sign. And if you give each of them a PIN number, a minimum of 4, so maybe you can say, I don't know, your phone number or their phone number, whatever, or you can provide them with an SMS text where they have to type in their phone number to get a code. And then the next one, which I wouldn't use that much, but the only time here is what we call the knowledge-based authentication, which they have to ask like 5 questions based on their buying habits. In the last 10 years, what was the car that you owned? You know, something like that. Of course, I'm not going to be able to know that because I don't remember 10 years ago. Okay? I'm lucky if I know what kind of car I had, period. Okay? And then, of course, you have control. This is something if you wanted to do this. I mean, you have the option to disable the signer's name, so they can't edit their name. You can actually go ahead and activate that. So that's something that you have, that you can do here on page 44 and 45. The next section I want to talk about then is on page 46. That is your documents. Well, it already has your documents for your seller representation agreement or your RE16, so it knows it's going to pull up that template from the library. So now we have to add the new listing checklist. Well, remember we created earlier in the last class a template for that form? All I've got to do on page 46 is to click on page 47, excuse me, you're going to click on this ellipsis, click on Apply Template, and then it's going to come up with the list, which is, this is what I just created in the other class. Check mark this, hit Next, and instead of assigning the fields where everyone has to sign, it's already been done. All I've got to do is select the signers, like you see on page 48. See that? And then hit Next. And so now, I'm good to go. Once I've done this, so what we just did here, what we've just done here, excuse me, is steps 1, 2, and 3 in one screen. Then I'm going to go ahead and click on the next button, which then takes us to page 49. And all of this is all on one screen. So look at this. I now have the initials, and I think somebody was, I think it was you that mentioned that they kind of like, looks like they're overlapping here. That's what it's going to look like, but it's going to fit, especially in the line that it's in. And here we have those initials here. Then we have those initials. This is all here where they all sign. Okay? And then down here, after this has been completed, this is where everyone here has to sign. So this here is step number 4 in the current version. You
So
can,
how come you didn't have to drag them there?
because I've already did that in the e-sign template.
When we did, okay.
Yes,
okay.
and that was in the last class in the beginning. But if I didn't do a template, that's what I would have to do.
Okay.
I just saved myself time
Right.
because it's preset. All I've got to do is identify my signers.
Yeah. Okay.
Then, the next page, 51, you have the option to preview before you send it out. So that preview button was that eyeball, okay? And now I can review, yep, this looks good to me, yep, yep, and so on and so forth. So if this looks good, I can now go ahead and either hit the back button, which takes me back to where I just came from, or you can click on the send button right over here. This paper plane, I don't know how they came up with that, but this paper airplane, click on the send button, and now it's going out to all the signers. And everything that you get after everyone signed is exactly the same. And then also, the way it's going to be received by the signers is the same way as it used to be. So here we have Al, and if you notice here is the information. And so now all they've got to do is, again, click review and sign. The only thing that's different now is this screen. Everything else is the same after the fact. They can decline if they don't want to sign this anymore, and that can be found on page 53. So 52, they click the review and sign. 53, they get that screen right there. They can contact the agent, and I'm ready to sign. Click on Start Signing. Click on Start. There it goes. See how fast that went down? Next. Boom. Boom. And boom. And that is what the signers get to do. And if they miss a spot, it's going to take them back to where they missed.
When they're signing and or initialing, it's the signature or initials that you pick or that they get to pick?
No, this is the initials, well, this is the initials that it's automatically what's included in the transaction participant.
That's what we pick for them.
Yes.
That's the answer. Thank you.
Yep. So here they are. See how fast we're going through this? Boom and the boom. And then we're done. And then it's going to go to the next person. Same exact process.
The reason why I asked is my sister just did one back in Michigan, and it's different. And it looked like she had signed. I was wondering, you know.
Yeah, no, they basically have, they have no choice. Based on what you've given them,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fine. Cool.
Yeah, because this way, because especially if you're dealing with, like say, a home path transaction, that has to be exact. Because and I'll never forget this. I was working with this one customer, and I was so upset because I had to do this 3 times. And of course, there was a slight language barrier too. I mean, he understood English, but I guess I was maybe not explaining it very well. And so anyway, he filled out that, he just put his first name and his last name. But when he signed it, first name, middle initial, last name. Oh, shit,
Yeah,
why'd you tell me that?
Yeah.
So then I had to redo that, and then I don't know what he was, I think it was either playing games or something. I had it correctly, but then he didn't put his middle initial. And I said, let's do this together now. Okay? So, but anyway, that's kind of what you will see. And then at the end, even though I don't have a copy of it shown here, what's going to happen is that you'll get your standard certificate of authenticity, which is not included here, but that's what you would have. It would have the certificate of authenticity additional to the signings, and that way you know exactly the order that they each sign. I'm not going to be able to complete the whole signing because we'll be here past the time. But that's what would happen. But the way you used to get your certificate of authenticity is exactly the same here. Nothing has changed. Okay? It's exactly the same. Any questions? And of course, it does show you this on your pages here too. Last but not least, here, and then we're done, on page 58. After you've completed this transaction, you want to put this away. Okay? Let's say you got your commission check and you want to close it up. You don't want this to pop in here anymore under the recent transactions, or you don't want it to show up anywhere in the active transactions. So the way to archive your transaction is to open up your transaction in step 1. Step 2, you're going to click on the Archive Transaction button. And then step 3, are you sure? On page 59, yes, I am. Now, it's very important that you do this. On step number 5, transaction status. It's showing new. Click on this drop-down menu and select what type of status this is. So if this is supposed to be a closed status, click on closed. If the transaction got rejected, click on rejected. Because I know my broker required, even if it didn't sell, to still archive my transactions for the purposes of auditing, you know, especially in case the state audited the office. So she just was kind of paranoid, just make sure we had everything there. But I would say, hey, if it's closed, you're done. And then once you find your, if you want to ever go back to your archive transactions, all you got to do is just click on transactions, click on archive transactions, and this is where you keep all of your archive transactions. And how long do they stay there for? Until you take them out. They're there for a long time, for long-term storage.
These are all just cloud storage, they're not a PDF that I can save in a folder on my computer?
You can do that. You can actually download this if you want. There's an option to select the forms, download, and then create a folder that way.
Yeah, because I backed up my backups.
You can do that. You still can do that.
Keeps the hash back.
Okay? That's up to you. Okay, any question, any other questions? I know I'm a little bit over the time, but that's okay. I want to make sure you all got everything here. Any questions on what we've talked about here?
Is this e-sign 2.0 effective right now?
It's been effective for the past couple of months.
So how do you switch over from the 1 to the 2?
What you want to go ahead and do is you want to switch over by clicking on Preferences.
Yeah.
Go to e-sign Preferences and Templates and change it from off to on. You have to do that. Otherwise it will not activate 2.0 version.
When I get into e-sign, it gives me the option of either.
Yes, well that's when you have it activated on. It will give you both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but you have to activate that in order for you to see the other version. So what do you all think of the program now, having learned all the nice tips and tricks?
Very nice.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, and I hope this was beneficial. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll hopefully see you